21 minutes after the hour, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. My colleague on the KRLA 870 in Los Angeles is Ben Shapiro, where he is co-host of the morning show there. And Ben, of course, is also the editor-at-large of Breitbart.com. Prolific author, wonderful guy. He's got a brand new book coming out called Bullies, which I'll be talking about with him in a couple of weeks after I've read it. But I want to talk to Ben today because of the Chuck Hagel nomination. Ben, how are you? Happy New Year.
Hey, you too. Thanks for having me.
I reached out to you through Twitter. You finally woke up. You weren't answering your messages, but you do check your Twitter feed.
I actually was napping, but your power is immense. I mean, I must have gotten 30 emails from people saying, Hugh's trying to get you on Twitter. Can you please respond?
I love Twitter. It is the greatest way to book guests in the world. If someone's got a Twitter account and you say, I'm looking for @Ben Shapiro, they show up. All right, Ben, bullies, that's another conversation, a different time. What do you think of Chuck Hagel, and what ought people to do about it?
You know, the truth is that I'm sort of okay with Chuck Hagel as the Secretary of Defense for a simple reason. I sort of like the mask off this administration. He's dramatically anti-Israel. He's borderline anti-Semitic. He's been very, very clear about his lack of support for the State of Israel. Look at his voting record. He was one of only 4 senators. He refused to sign a letter in support of Israel in October 2000 when the Palestinians launched violence against the State of Israel. In 2001, in the middle of a war, as the PLO was waging war against Israel, Hagel was there were only 11 senators who refused to sign a letter urging Bush not to meet with Arafat, and Hagel was one of those people. In 2005, there was a group of 27 senators, including Hagel. They refused to sign a letter to President Bush to pressure the Palestinian Authority to ban terrorist groups from participating in elections. So Hagel was fine with terrorist groups participating in elections. That worked out, obviously, extraordinarily well in the Gaza Strip, right, where Hamas is now in charge. In 2006, he was only one. There were 12 senators, only 12, who refused to sign a letter asking that Hezbollah be designated a terrorist organization. He was against that. Hezbollah obviously has been launching rockets on northern Israel for years and years and years and years. Beyond that, when it comes to Iran, this is a guy who has opposed sanctions on Iran. He doesn't like sanctions on Iran. He thinks we ought to be having direct bilateral negotiations with a terrorist regime in Iran. So here's my conclusion. I'm happy with him as Secretary of Defense because I'm sick of all of these people Obama trots out pretending to be pro-Israel and all of these Jews who deceive themselves by pretending these people are pro-Israel. Let him nominate somebody who is very obviously anti-Israel and borderline anti-Semitic, and then we'll at least know where he stands.
I want to come back to borderline anti-Semitic, but first, I got to argue the point with you, though, Ben. Think this through. You can do an enormous damage to the United States military in 3.5 years as the leader of the Pentagon. Damage that will not be repairable for decades to come. You can decommission ships. You can cut the nuclear deterrent. You can force the resignation of senior leadership who are extraordinary men and women in the command of the armed services that it takes 30 years to replace. This is not like running the Department of the Interior, and you can't really destroy Yosemite. You can destroy the American military.
For sure, and that's why he's being brought in. He's being brought in specifically by Obama as cover to do precisely that, right? The fact that he's a Republican is really the key here because there are a lot of people on the left side of the aisle who have all of Chuck Hagel's beliefs and views. Obama could have picked any of them. The reason he picked Chuck Hagel is because he fully intends on slashing the military in dramatic fashion, and he wants the cover of a Republican in order to do so. So he can say, oh, look, it was a bipartisan cut in the military. It was something that we had to do. Even a Republican like Chuck Hagel knew that we could do this. This is Obama's whole goal. This is a no-lose situation for him. If Hagel actually goes down here, if not enough Democrats vote for him, then Obama will turn around and he'll say, look at these Republicans. They can't even get their act together to vote for a Republican. That's how much they hate me. And if Hagel wins, then he's got his he sort of likes Republicans in this slot, right? He had Robert Gates there so that he could pretend that he was following up President Bush's foreign policy.
Well, I am willing to run the risk that we do better the second time around than to let Hagel, who is so anti-military and so anti-Israel. Now, let me ask you about borderline anti-Semitic. That's like saying borderline anti-Irish. That's sort of like when you had the Irish need not apply on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. What does borderline anti-Semitic mean? Either you are or you're not.
Yeah, well, you know what? You're right. He's anti-Semitic. I'll just say it.
All right, good.
This is a guy who he has said, when he talks about the Jewish lobby, I mean, there are Christians, as he knows, who are pro-Israel. When he talks about the Jewish lobby controlling Congress, that's anti-Semitic talk. When he talked about there was a port deal in Israel that was going down a few years back, and he talked about let the Jews pay for it, not let the Israelis pay for it. Let the Jews pay for it. I mean, this is a guy who is very, very comfortable with anti-Semitic slurs. And look, the distinction between anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic is a lot thinner than a lot of people realize. To me, what makes you an anti-Semite, if you treat Israel as a state completely different from any other state on planet Earth, if you treat them with a completely different standard of behavior because they are the Jewish state, then you're an anti-Semite.
I want people to hear this quote, which you had over at Breitbart.com last night. This is Chuck Hagel talking, and at the end he says, "I'm not the senator from Israel," raising the old canard of divided loyalty. And divided loyalty is part and parcel of anti-Semitism. It suggests that Jewish people are not citizens of the country to which they pledge allegiance, but are citizens of the Jewish nation first. And so when you indulge this canard, you are playing an anti-Semitic stereotype that is ancient. Here's the quote.
The reality is that you intimidate a lot, not you, but the Jewish lobby intimidates a lot of people up here. And again, I've always argued against some of the dumb things they do because I don't think it's in the interest of Israel. I just don't think it's smart for Israel. Now, everyone has a right to lobby. That's as it should be. And come see your senator and congressman. If you can get the guy to sign your letter, great, wonderful. But as I reminded somebody not too long ago, in fact, it was a group I was speaking to in New York, and we got into a kind of an interesting give and take on Iran. And a couple of these guys said, well, we should just attack Iran. I said, well, it's an interesting thought. We're doing so well in Iraq. Right. And I said it would really help Israel. And I said, so this guy kept pushing and pushing. And he alluded to the fact that, well, maybe I wasn't supporting Israel enough or something. And I don't know how we get. And I just said, well, let me clear something up here if there's any doubt in your mind. I said, I'm a United States senator. I'm not an Israeli senator. I'm a United States senator. I support Israel. But my first interest, because I take an oath of office to the Constitution of the United States, not to a president, not to a party, not to Israel.
That Ben Shapiro, I take an oath to the United States, not to Israel, suggests that other people do take an oath to Israel.
That's exactly right. And it suggests not only the Jews take an oath to Israel, it also suggests that legislators who are pro-Israel take an oath to Israel.
Yes.
Somehow they're so connected to the Jewish lobby, they're so in the pocket of the crazy Jews, that they are voting against American interests because they legitimately are senators from Israel. Now, here's what really bothers me about all of this. Chuck Hagel's an anti-Semite, fine. Anti-Semites are what anti-Semites are. The Obama administration, I've said for a long time, is anti-Semitic, and they've covered it up with a lot of stuff about Rahm Emanuel, even as Rahm Emanuel was threatening the AIPAC, threatening American Israel Political Action Committee with no sanctions on Iran unless Israel started making concessions to the Palestinians. They've been covering it up for a long time. It bothers me, obviously. It doesn't bother me as much as the fact that so many American Jews continue to back the Democratic Party. There are too many Jews in this country who are willing to buy the convenient fiction that the Democratic Party is still pro-Israel. There is a reason that they excised Jerusalem as the capital of Israel from the Democratic National Convention platform. There is a reason that Barack Obama's administration has repeatedly leaked Israeli national security information to prevent any sort of Israeli strike on Iran. There is a reason that the Obama administration has opposed virtually every measure that would secure Israel for the long term. And I'm talking not just about sanctions, which they really have attempted to water down. I mean, Mitt Romney said it in the debates, and he was exactly right. The Obama administration has tried to water down the sanctions on Iran. The very first thing that happened after this election, the Senate tried to take up a stricter regime of sanctions on Iran, and the Obama administration basically vetoed it. This is what they stand for. Jews who continue to buy into this are not only fooling themselves, honestly, they're Jews in name only at this point.
Ben Shapiro, I'll look for you tomorrow morning on KRLA. Good luck with the new book, Bullies. I'll talk to you in a couple of weeks about it. Thanks for joining me. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.